Hey, everybody, welcome. I just want to start by saying a really sincere and heartfelt Happy Mother's Day to all of you moms out there, especially to my mom, Julie. I love you. Thanks for the investment that you've made and continue to make in my life. One of the most influential mom figures that I'm around daily is my bride, Allison. And the way that she mothers our kids is just something that is truly beautiful to me. And I got her a gift a couple of years back. I don't think this was Mother's Day. I think this was for her birthday, if I remember correctly. But it was actually quite a few years back when I worked for the school district. And I worked in the school district with a gal who was over this art department. Her name was Gloria. And I got this idea because this painting right here, which many of you probably instantly recognize, this is a reproduction of Van Gogh's, say it, wherever you are, Starry Night. That's right. And my wife has always just been captivated by this painting. It's her favorite. The colors and just the swirls on it, all of it is just something that really has just captivated her for years. So I talked to Gloria and I just said, "Hey, Gloria, what would it take for me to have you reproduce this and really like take your time with it?" And she thought about it for a while and she's like, "Well, if you buy the paints and you come pressure wash my house, I'll make the painting for you." And so I was like, "You got a deal." And if that sounds like a good deal, I'll tell you this. Her house was out in the country roads all around. Boy, it was a dirty job, but that house was sparkling when I was done with it. And I got her about this size of a poster of Starry Night, and she looked at that with such detail and such care, where she literally investigated and figured out which brush strokes came before other ones. And so she recreated it to the best of her ability and painted it in the order that she figured that Vincent van Gogh painted it in. And it really turned out quite beautiful. Allison's loved it. It's been displayed in our house ever since. But the painting speaks to a lot of people in a lot of ways. And one of the great themes from Van Gogh's work is he often has these spiritual elements to it. You see, he grew up the son of a Dutch Reformed pastor and had his own aspirations for the ministry as well. And so there's oftentimes this context of the spiritual world in his paintings. And this one's no exception. You can see how the area up here, the sky, has these beautiful colors and these beautiful swirls. It's sort of this mysterious, spiritual, heavenly realm that then is interacting and going over this earthly realm right here of all of the creation. And you see this village that's here tucked down below too of the habitats of humanity there. And one of the fascinating things about this painting that people just really marvel at is that there's two elements in it that if you took them out would change the painting really dramatically. One is this tree right here in the foreground, and the other is this church right here. And if you can imagine those two elements being taken out, what you would have is you just would have this very clear distinction between the heavens and the earth. But what they think that Van Gogh was doing as he painted this was that he was painting it, and you see the created world reaching up from the earth into the heavens. And you see that with the church too, the house of worship. It's reaching up into the heavens. Or you could also see it from the perspective of God reaching down to touch and to interact with the earth, so they're coming together. And if you're thinking to yourself, "Corey, you really went big. Do I have time to schedule an artist to paint something custom for the special mom in my life?" You don't. You probably have to stick to finger paints today, but you could plan ahead. But I'm going to tell you more about this painting and some of the really the profound insights that it has to our lives and our spiritual lives in a minute. So let's talk about a few other things first, and then I think some extra elements of this will really pop. We've been in this series here at the church for the last 3 weeks, and this is the fourth and final week of this series. There's these 4 statements that we hold very dear to just who God has us being as a church in this community and in our whole lives. And it's this idea of who we are. And so we've covered these different statements leading up to today's statement, which is this, that we are a vibrant community center. We are a vibrant community center. You know, this is an area of this church that has been a ministry in my life, and it's been something that as I've participated in the life of this church, it's given me a bigger vision for the communities around me. And this idea of being a vibrant community center, it has an internal dispensation kind of to us as we come together here. We get to connect with God in community. We get to connect with one another in community. And then it also has this external dispensation as well, where we're connecting in the community. And the community is viewing this church and its people as a resource that makes the community more vibrant. I'll tell you a couple of stories just to help really make this reality pop for you. One of the demographics that really struggled through the pandemic was students. Students are very social, especially middle and high school students. That is a highly socialized time in your life. And the pandemic created all of this social isolation and distance. And I'm really proud of Mark and our student ministries team who worked so hard to make sure that our students could continue to meet and do so in a safe manner. And that was just a beautiful thing. I remember when the youth group was shut down for a little while and then they came back, and it was just beautiful to see the church filled up and forming these connections of community with young people. I love the reputation that our church has out of these doors, inside of this city, in our nation, and even around the world. This place is viewed as a place that when the church shows up, when Court Street shows up, things get better. They get more vibrant. And the pandemic gave us some difficulties in expressing that, but we still found a way. You know, I love it that we were able to continue hosting our homeschool group that meets here, and they use our facility to come together so the students get to socialize. I love that our child care center found a way to continue meeting and to adapt to all the regulations to keep partnering with families. You know, there's 65 students that go to our child care center here, and we just get to cheer on God's work in them and their families, and we were able to keep doing that. I love that our neighbors view us as a place that they can come to for help. We live in our church here is placed in a historic district, and so there's these wonderful historic homes, and you might not know this, but there's also some historic gardens and historic landscapes that are contained around these houses. And somebody in the neighborhood was setting up this tour. In fact, this is coming up here shortly, where they're going to let people go around and tour these different gardenscapes. And they came over and they pulled our door just to kind of say, hey, this is in your neighborhood. Would you guys cheer this on, just promote it and let people park here and serve as a hub? And we were like, absolutely, that's great. We love the idea of getting to enhance the goodness that's going on in the community around us. Over another group that reached out to us. We have a great partnership with our local mission, helping people who are experiencing homelessness and other things just to rebuild their lives and have a safe place to live. And our local Union Gospel Mission reached out to us for a program that they do every year. You see, they have this extensive program that people are always going through at the mission. It takes about 1.5 years to get through it. But it straight up takes people who are experiencing homelessness, oftentimes experiencing some other difficult things. They might have some drug addiction, or they may have some legal issues from their past, or things that are just hurts, habits, and hang-ups that are keeping them from really living a vibrant life. And the mission takes these folks in, they put them through this 1.5 year long program, and then they have this really wonderful graduation celebration. And at that graduation celebration, you get to hear these testimonies of folks and what that last 1.5 years has meant to them and their vision that they have for the future. And the mission reached out to us. COVID restrictions had put things into a tailspin, and they're like, is there any way you could host this and still follow all the regulations? And so here's an image from this they call it the New Life Fellowship graduation. And there's these 4 guys up on the stage there, and each of them just gave this powerful, compelling testimony. And you may be a little agitated with me right now because you're like, Corey, why didn't you invite us? We hosted this at our church. I didn't even know about this. This was back at Easter. Well, the truth of it is, as you can see, we met our COVID capacity just to host the event. In fact, I wasn't even really allowed in. I was in the lobby doing security. And so if we do get to host one of these in the future, don't worry, you'll get invited. But I love this. The church was a place, they reached out to us. We said, yeah, we'll host this and we can do it and we can keep everybody safe. And those stories can be told here. Those stories of a vibrant life coming into somebody's life and just bringing the beauty of God's love. When the pandemic hit, one of the things that was a great tragedy for us was we really got kind of rocked off balance by it because there's this wonderful community connection that we have with a school nearby the church here called Richmond. And we had these mentoring relationships going, and we were helping kids. We were meeting with them weekly, giving them just great attention and great help with their work. And it was really just a beautiful thing for us and a beautiful thing for them. Well, the pandemic shut that down. And we were really kind of reeling from that because it's like, oh, this is our heartbeat. We love this. We want to do it. And we know the students need support. Well, it didn't take us long and our team long, led by our Lisa Martin is our staff person that runs with us. She started just reaching out to the school and going, what can we do? We have to do something. We can't just wait for this thing to pass. And so we started this really, it's been a year-long letter campaign where we've been writing to our students. And we give the notes to the school distributes them to the students, and we've sometimes been sending them care packages. And then we were just asking the school, what else can we do? What can we do to just cheer you guys on during this difficult time? And they told us stories about there were families that experienced severe financial hardship and job loss. And we partnered with some of those families to get them very practical resources to keep them going. One of the great delights of this partnership was they were realizing, as students have finally been able to come back, that it's really crucial for them to have these outdoor spaces so that students can go out there and they can be socially distanced and they can everything is safe for them. And so their outdoor spaces, though, through COVID hadn't gotten much attention. And they just reached out to us and they said, could the church help with this? And so I want to show you a video. This is one of those things that for me as a pastor, my heart just goes pitter-patter about this. I love it when we're out there as the church getting dirt under our nails and just making things more vibrant and beautiful. And so take a look at what happened here just a couple weeks ago. Isn't that exciting and amazing? Would you just give wherever you are just a little woot woot to God or a round of applause or whatever? I just love when the church shows up and life gets better for people. And there's so many more things that I could say about that. It's not just happening here in this community. It's happening really around the world and with all of our other different ministry partners. But those are just a few stories to share today. You know, there's this very human tendency that we can experience. In fact, I think most religions experience this where we take God and we limit him to a certain space, like a church or a synagogue or a temple. And we view coming to these spaces as, well, that's where you go to experience God, or that's where you go, and it's the only place really, and all the other places of the earth are kind of different. But I want you to know that the scripture talks differently about this. God talks differently about this. In fact, I'm going to read to you an excerpt from a great speech by a guy named Stephen. He was a leader in the early church, and he was pushing back against this perception of God only being in certain spots, like inside of a church building. And here's what he says. He says, "The Most High does not live in houses made by human hands. As the prophet has said, 'Heaven's my throne, and the earth is my footstool.' What kind of house will you build for me, says the Lord? Or where will my resting place be? Has not my hand made all of these things?" You see, this place is a special place to God. Every place in all of creation is special to God. He's an international God. Heck, he's an intergalactic God. Look at that image. Heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool. He's like, I'm everywhere, baby. I created all of this stuff. And so while the church building is a significant hub, really what's ultimately significant is all of us cooperating with God to be the church wherever we are in all of God's creation. The blessed Jesus was an exceptional example of this point. When he came and he entered the earth, he stepped down from heaven into the creation. We see Jesus in these snapshots of his life, and especially his 3-year public ministry, that he's interacting with folks in many different spheres. Sometimes he's teaching at the temple. Other times he's teaching. In fact, some of his most famous sermons were around a dinner table or out in the countryside on a hillside. And he's interacting with folks in a way that lends this vibrancy. When Jesus showed up, people's lives generally got better. They were healed. The truth about the creation and who they are was revealed to them, and people were leaning into this and discovering a more vibrant life with God that Jesus came to show. You know, to Jesus, the thing that I want us to catch about this is, to Jesus, every place was sacred, and so was every relationship. It wasn't just about a holy place set aside. It was about seeing the sacred nature of everything and everyone. And Jesus walked through life and lived that out in just a compelling way, didn't he? You know what this means for us is, as we think about us, the church, being a vibrant community center, it's not just here. Or what happens as we talk about, how we're going to go in the community and do this kind of a church service project. It's really about every community that you and I exist in. And I want you to just consider for just a moment that every relational environment that you and I have is actually a community. We're in community with the environment that we're stewarding. We're in community with the animals maybe that you have in your house, and especially we are existing in community with the people that we encounter. Now really get this. I want you to consider this for a moment. This is kind of a different paradigm to view things through, but your workplace is not just a place of work, it's actually a community, isn't it? Your neighborhood is a place of community. Your families, they're not just, things and you're, working together or surviving or whatever. Your family's actually a community. Your school's a community. Your dorm room is a community. In fact, if we zoom in even closer, those of you that are in classes, your classroom is a little community of people going on the journey of discovering math together or history or whatever it is. But you're a community. The places that you shop, those are communities. The restaurants that you go to, those are communities. Maybe you can think of some other ones, and you might want to just write that down or just take note of, I never thought of these interactions this way, but there's this communal aspect to it. In the last year, some of those communities, we lost connection to them, didn't we? We had to be isolated. And we really experienced the tragic loss of that. Maybe you really missed that celebratory time when you get to go out to a restaurant with friends or someone in your life, and you just get to be with them and to enjoy the atmosphere and enjoy the food, and you were missing out on that type of interaction. Or maybe you were missing out on the joy of being in class with students and just the buzz of that and the whole, beautiful mess that it is, and you were missing out. And then there's the truth of it is some of the things that we missed out on, we didn't miss, did we? And we were like, it was actually kind of a nice break. In fact, for me, I'm an introvert, and for introverts, some parts of COVID were like, man, this kind of feels like paradise. And wasn't it great, though, too, when we got to re-engage with some of those communities, or even when we maybe discovered the communal nature that was already around us that we had taken for granted? I can't tell you how many stories I've experienced and heard about through our church of people that had just never really gotten to know their neighbors. And all of a sudden during COVID, they're the only people that they really get to be around. And they got to know each other. And they got to share things together. And when the ice storm happened or when this happened, they got to relate and they got to bond together to make their community more vibrant. And that's just beautiful. Allison and I, we really love sharing our home with people. We love it when it's filled up with laughter of people and people eating good meals and all this kind of stuff. We really love it when it just feels like a place that when our community comes there, they feel more vibrant and they feel more filled up. And there was this great story that we felt really humbled and really privileged to get to live out with one of our neighbors a little bit back when this neighbor had experienced just some really difficult and traumatic news. And she was literally kind of just reeling from it. She just had found out and she's just kind of, just disoriented, like, what do I do with this? And her husband wasn't home at the time, and so she's like, I don't know, I just need to talk to somebody about this. And so she came over and she knocked on our door. And we brought her in, we heard her story, we heard the agony that she was going through, we gave her a hug. It was just one of these moments where we just really got to just listen and just care about this person. And after she was able to just share it with us, she was a little lighter, and she'd kind of found her bearings a little bit more, and she was just super appreciative that she could come and that we would let her just share the difficulty and the messiness of what she was going through. I'll tell you what, after she left, I looked at Allison and I just was like, man, babe, I'm so glad that our neighbors view our house and us as a place they could go when things are difficult and life might get a little bit better for them. You see, when we're living like that, and we're living with that type of awareness, we're not just being the church here, which is significant, but we're being the church everywhere because we are the church. If I think back to some of those stories, just those little snapshots that I mentioned earlier about some of the good work that we get to stir up here through this place, if you really think about it, if our church was to disappear, those stories just wouldn't be told. I mean, other churches are busy with other things that are good in the city, but these things are the things that we're doing together. These are the stories that we're working with God to write, and wouldn't it be a tragedy to miss out on all of that goodness? It's even more of a tragedy, though, I have to say, when a church transitions from being a vibrant community center to becoming a devitalized and exclusive club. That's the ultimate tragedy of a church right there, is when we go from being this place that people view as, if I go to the church or if I ask the church, things will get more vibrant, they can help, they'll cheer me on, to people going, why would I go to church? I just would feel worse about myself. And we all have to resist this because, it's kind of human nature to just get comfortable, isn't it? It's kind of human nature to go, well, let's just kind of keep it safe and we can kind of manage this and we all feel kind of good about each other and we'll build our own kind of inside jokes and build our own stuff, and all the people out there, maybe we'll lob them a few resources every once in a while, but let's just stay in here where it's nice and safe. But that devitalized and exclusive club, it's not the life that Jesus modeled for us or the best life that he created us to participate in it, is it? It's when we are living beyond ourselves as that vitalized community center, that vibrant community center, that when the church shows up, the people of the church show up, life gets better. I'll come back to this painting here and the story of Vincent van Gogh. his relationship with the church, because of his upbringing and really the desires of his heart, he always had this desire to connect with spiritual things and with the church. In fact, one of the great disappointments and difficulties in his life is he didn't ever feel like the church really knew what to do with him. He was an artist. He had very much an artistic temperament, and he also struggled his entire life with mental health and really mental illness as well. And he didn't start out in life to become a painter. In fact, he started out in life hoping to become a pastor, but he was rejected from that. And after his rejection from that, he started living amongst the poor and serving the poor. And it was in Belgium, actually, that he was living in this very poor mining camp where the people were working difficult jobs. Life was hard. They were incredibly impoverished. This was dirty work, as you can imagine. This is the late 1800s that he's living there with these people. And he's just so compelled by them and the humanity of them and the beauty of them. They don't really fit inside of a pretty, clean church building. But he just sees the beauty of God in them, and so he just starts to draw them. He's got no training in drawing, no training in painting, but he's just compelled by what he encounters to just start trying to encapsulate the vibrancy of who these people are. And from there, things just really built for him, and even this painting which he created, he wrote to his brother, he felt like it was a failure. And so he was always struggling with these very human emotions that sometimes just went to the area of mental illness and crippling for him. This painting here was actually done after or while he had himself committed to an asylum. You see the mental difficulties that he was going through had gotten so pronounced that the year before he painted this, he actually mutilated himself by cutting off one of his own ears. And after that, he said, I need some help. I need an environment. He ended up getting into this asylum by his own volition, and there he created some of his most famous works that we love today, including this one. And there's an element to this that reveals sort of the pain and the difficulty that he had in the relationship between the church and himself. You see, he really longed to be inside of here. He had this connection to church, and he had this connection to God, and he still viewed it as something that was vital, that helped to connect people to God. But he experienced rejection. He experienced devitalization. It seemed like a club that he just couldn't break into, and he felt like an outsider, and he felt like a freak, really. And one of the things to note about this painting, you have this town down here, and really all of the buildings in town have some type of light source, or they're in these light colors. Then you very clearly see the church. And the church, though, doesn't. The lights have gone out in the church for Van Gogh. He still saw it as this opportunity to connect with God, but for him it had become devitalized. That's the ultimate tragedy right there, isn't it? And I really want you to consider today, because this is so true. Maybe you never thought about the communities that you're in, or you just thought, well, I'll go to church to do some good stuff. No. You are the church. And every community, every relationship that you are in is a form of community. And so I want to ask you this inspiring question to maybe think about this the way that Jesus lived out. And that's this: where can I bring more vibrancy to my communities? Where is that for you? Maybe it's just a small step. Maybe you just start praying about it. Maybe you are viewing some of your communities, your workplace, the people you're around at school, whatever, your neighbors. Maybe you're viewing them with the sense of annoyance, and that's bringing the vibrancy down. What would it look like to just view them from a different perspective and ask God for help in that? This is an idea, a reality that as I was preparing this sermon, it had some real punch for me this week. I really was able to see myself in some of the areas where I was blowing it, and I kind of came up with this extra paradigm, this extra question here to look at that might help you see this even more clearly. If I'm more focused in my communities on fixing problems than on loving people, I'm probably not contributing to the vibrancy, am I? So are you? Are you more focused right now on fixing problems or on loving people in those communities. When I come home to my house, come up the front steps, and there's a window, like a big, half the door is like a window. And as I go to open that door each day when I get home, oftentimes I can see my family over to the right in the living room, and I also have this view of the kitchen right as I walk in. And so I have these two environments that just even as I'm looking through the door and opening it, I see these two areas. And I was building up some irritation with my teenagers about getting the dishes done during the day. And I'm sure none of you have ever experienced that. My teens are really unique. They somehow forget their chores every day, but I know it doesn't ever happen for anybody else. So just try to relate to this, right? But it's one of those chores too where it's like, man, we have a machine that washes the dishes. All it really takes is like 5 minutes to load them here or to unload them here to then reload them, and boom, oh my goodness, and it's done. And I came home this one day, and it had been a long day at work. I'd spent a lot of energy on things, and I just was exhausted. And as I'm coming through the door, I open it, and I see right there on the counter, and I can see the dishwasher, and I know the 5-minute chore didn't happen that day. And I got to tell you, I just lost my stuff. And I would describe myself as a dark cloud that like erupted through the front door into the house. And Allison was really gracious. She tried to really gently help me and redirect me. She's like, the girls had some stuff going on today. And I literally was like, I don't care about that. I was like, I'm mad and it's time for me to say it. And everybody needs to feel my wrath. I think that was my actual word, as I was just incensed by the fact that the dishes hadn't been done. And after that, and we went through a whole thing, and I talked with folks, and we eventually reconciled and worked it all out. But the next day I'm working on this sermon, and God's swirling around things like this in my mind and in my heart. And I'm like, I walked into that community center that is my house, and when I walked in, things got worse for people. The lights kind of went out. The dark cloud of dad came home upset about the 5-minute dishes. And the next day, as I was working on that, I was like, I can make that choice as I walk into the house. I can look at the problems first. I mean, they're still there and they're worth addressing. Or I can start and I can look to the people and I can acknowledge them first and love them. And then we can go and we can talk about the problems. So I don't know where this sermon intersects with your life, where it intersects with the communities that you're in, but I trust that God's Spirit is going to help you to see that. And I want to just really invite you to take hold of this bigger vision for your life, for your communities. And I'm going to give you just a few moments here. We're going to have another song, and I hope that during that song that you'll consider these questions that I've asked. You'll consider these perspectives, and you'll invite God in to say, God, would you give me a bigger vision for being a vibrant part of the communities that I'm in? And I'll give the scripture the final word here, the final inspiration for us. I'll remind you of who Jesus was and why he came. And I'm going to read to you from one of his closest followers, a guy named John. He wrote this about Jesus, and it has some of this poetic element to it and some of this biblical imagery to it. But he's talking about Jesus as the Word of who God is. The words of God had come to earth in the form of Jesus and been made flesh. Listen to this. And the truth is, Jesus could have come as a dark cloud, couldn't he? He could have come and he could have been like, man, I gave you all this place, the life in your lungs, the whole bit, and you really have just been trashing the whole joint. But this is how he came, as a vibrant, life-giving spirit. Here we go. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and full of truth. Through him, all things were made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Take a few moments to consider the life of Christ, the communities that you're in, and may God meet you in this space.